welcome to this edition of this podcast. I am Rocky Stucci, and of course, sitting along with me today is Miss Valerie Sayre and Kent Sayre from Nutrition Connection Balance. Both of you guys, thank you so much for your time and coming on this afternoon. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having us. Really appreciate
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Yeah, absolutely. And, this is really exciting because you both came back from DC. You were just recently in DC. A few weeks ago, you guys were in Dallas, kind of where I was at for the last 4 years. So you guys are staying busy. Why don't you first, you know what, let's do this. Before we talk about what's happening now, I want to do this because there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be being introduced to you for the first time. And I want them to know exactly who is Valerie, who is Kent, who is Nutrition Connection Balance, and what is the purpose? What is the goal? What is the reasoning for why you guys do what you do? So Val, let's start with you as the founder of Nutrition Connection Balance. It's helping people, it's healing people, but it's doing it differently. What is your mission? What's your why?
Yeah. So, part of the mission is to really help people heal from every condition, symptom, or concern they have, but make sure it's individualized. I got into this particular field because I came from a really wonderful, loving family, but very unhealthy. And I said, well, man, why can't I be loving, athletic, and healthy? And, even when I was young, they say, oh, that's probably just not going to happen because of your genes. And so I just decided at an early age, I just wasn't going to buy into that. And I've had to work really hard, and I've had to add degrees and certifications after certifications. But it helped me, again, have empathy for people, realize that we all have different things that can be out of balance, that can cause problems, whether it's genetic or an addiction or stress. And we have to learn how to manage that and become more resilient. And that's what the practice does. It helps you identify those, or if you already know what the symptoms are, we identify what the actual cause is, get to the underlying cause, individualize the treatment through natural, herbal, vitamin, nutrient, lifestyle, exercise, and testing to help you get that back in balance, whether you want to go very slow and address one or two things at a time, or whether you really need an overhaul that sometimes we just need when we've had a lot of life stuff that happens to us. So I'm really passionate about that. I've had a private practice for over 20 years, and Kent is one of our other practitioners. And Kent, do you want to talk a little bit about what you do?
Yeah, so Valerie is the overarching expert on everything. I have some specific areas that I focus on, which is namely the omega-3 balancing and getting that optimized, because that's one of the most biggest bang for your buck things that anyone can do. The vitamin D, identifying toxic metals or other toxins if that's an issue, because that can cause a lot of symptoms, balancing minerals. And then, really, my specialty is focusing on a natural way to address mental health. So, I have a background in psychology. I studied at Florida State, and then I went abroad to Copenhagen to do a master's in cognition and communication. So, a lot of my background has to do with mental health and neurotransmitter support. And that's another area of expertise. One of our tests is focused entirely on addressing that in a natural way.
Wow. Wow. Copenhagen. Wow. Okay. That'll be for a whole nother show. How's that sound? So,
Yeah. I mean,
so
it's not just the dip, it's also a place.
I didn't. All right. So let me ask a question today. I'm trying to be super professional, Ken. You know what I'm saying? I was going to
Yo,
say,
that's my bad. That's my bad.
no, and here I am. There's a snippety snip part right there. Um, let me ask you this though. Now, we have gotten to know each other over the months now, and I'm going to approach you as if I was approaching you for the first time as walking in, because let me just give a 30-second breakdown. I'm a recovering addict. I abused for years, mainly pharmaceuticals. It was the methadone, oxycontins, the benzodiazepines. I'm a former athlete, semi-pro football player, but I've abused my body tremendously. And I'm 51 years old, going to be 52 here within the next few months. And I'm tired and I'm beat up. My mind is tired, and I've always been a go-getter. And I find myself to be in this mental frustration because I've gotten so used to having this ball of energy that I don't have anymore. And now it seems like what used to be a normal day 5 years ago seems to be this incredible fight just to get through a day sometimes of this fatigue. So if I was to sit down with either one of you, What? How would the conversation even start?
So it always starts in what is your goal of doing this sort of investigation? That's really what it is to start with. Is we're actually investigating, okay, what symptoms are you experiencing? What type of history have you had? What is your goal with getting a specific treatment based on these things? So it really is an investigation to start with.
Yeah. And what we do is, either someone calls our office or they go to our website, and then there's very thorough intake form. And even before you fill the intake form in, if you just want to talk to someone, you don't know even if you should fill an intake form or what you need, that's where again you reach out to our office or email, and one of the Kent or I will talk to you and the office manager and make sure we know how to direct you so that we are directing you to what the best way is to start. So that, when you have a lot of things going on like that, right? You said 51 years of a lot of battles, then we want to know, like Ken said, what are your top maybe 1 to 3 concerns first? Because most people just can't handle, because life is busy. Life is full. Life is full of ups and downs. There's financial, issues or could be, or limitations. So we want to know what your first 1 to 3 goals are that would help start changing this experience that you're at this time. And then we keep adding on to, hopefully, again, the body's a whole system, and we don't like to just treat symptoms, but you have to get on a road to start feeling better to usually be able to do the next step.
Okay, the next step. What would the next step be?
Yeah. So Kent, what would be, based on what Rocky said, what would be the best thing for him to start with? What test and first experience?
Yeah. So for someone like you, Rocky, we have a foundational aspect that we recommend for everybody, no matter what, and that makes it easy to have like an actual concrete starting point. So these are the biggest bang for your buck tests, and then supplements that are specific to you based on the tests that affect everything. They affect everything. So hormones, bone density, mineral composition. A lot of them affect hair loss and inflammation. Any type of inflammation is always involved in a starting point of some type of disease or condition or symptoms. So we have three things that make up our foundational part, which would be getting your omega 3s balanced and ideal, getting your vitamin D balanced and ideal, and getting your fruit and vegetable intake up. Or we use the Juice Plus a lot in that case, just because it makes it easy and consistent. So those three things would be the starting point. And then after that, we've got to ask, okay, so you've had a lot of issues with, what was it? You mentioned, did you have any like injuries or?
Yeah, I had lower back surgeries. I had cheekbone cave in. I had a broken jaw surgery. Been stabbed in the leg. I got an injury from a stab in the leg. Yeah, I could go on for the next 15 minutes.
So you've been through a lot, and it sounds to me that a lot of medical procedures, maybe,
Yes.
a lot of inflammation, obviously involved with that, a lot of trauma, and you mentioned some drug parts as well.
Yeah, so it was my lower back surgery, which actually, this is the innocence. This is how it starts, and this is what I really want people to hear from me is that we're doing what the doctors tell us to do. We go through a traumatic surgery. I had my back ripped open. I got 14 screws holding my back together. So of course the pain is horrifying, and so you start out innocently taking these painkillers. You don't realize that you're building a tolerance. You don't realize you're starting to take more, and before you know it, you don't realize until you do that you start running out early, and before you know it, you're a full-blown drug addict. Well, this went on for years, brother, and it was the methadone, it was the morphine, it was the OxyContin, and then the benzos to sleep. So on top of
Yeah,
all the physical stuff, it was all the pharmaceutical stuff as well, the abuse.
I would definitely say a good starting point then would be to measure some sort of a toxin. Between the medical testing, there's a lot of toxin exposure with that. Drugs, there's always some sort of a toxin risk with that.
So Ken,
Um,
let me ask this. So before we get too far ahead, you're mentioning testings. Uh, so break that down to me. You guys do testing, but you guys also create a convenience in the testing to where people can test from their home. Is that correct?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Why don't we really quick just get this out in the open so everybody's aware when we reference the term testing? Give everybody the quick what you are meaning by testing.
So testing is you either you or we collectively, based on your symptoms and your goals, will send a test kit to your house. You'll collect the sample yourself. It comes with a label you stick on there that sends it to the lab. The lab will give us the results, and then we, either me or Valerie, will evaluate it. And based on that, and based on your goals and symptoms, we can say, okay, here's the things that are out of range, here's what's excellent, and then we can create a lifestyle and dietary and supplement plan for you based off of that.
So you're saying that they don't need to go to a physical location. They can do an over online interview with you. They can do the testing from the convenience of their home, and then they'll send the testing back to you. You will evaluate the testing and then go over the results with them, and they don't ever have to leave.
Yeah. And
Okay.
not only is it just like right to your door and you do it and then we take care of the rest. But like Valerie mentioned before, it's really about the personalized evaluation. And to me, seeing some other businesses attempting something similar, that's what separates us from them. That's what's sort of missing a lot of times, in my opinion.
Well, I like hearing the fact that you guys are attacking the core issues too, because more times than none, from a pharmaceutical perspective, they were always dealing with the symptoms of what was wrong with me. They weren't actually addressing core issues. They were always just addressing what they were causing. And so it's kind of supporting what you were just saying.
Yeah. And when you're in recovery like this, those toxins can still affect your energy, your moods, your get up and go, your motivation, apathy, all of that. And again, it just depends on what the top things are that really are holding you back that you want to address first. Because even there, like Ken said, we could do the neurotransmitters test because there are different mental health markers in there that affect energy, that affect your ability to stay focused, that affect addictions and making sure that you can stay off those types of things forever. But let's say that what's still causing that imbalance is the toxins, and especially with the history, that might be where to go. It depends again of where that client and when that person fills out that intake form that's really thorough so that we make sure we're addressing what is going to help you get on that road. And, because if you have no energy and we even find toxins and you have no energy, you still can't follow through with a lot of directions. So that's
I
why
think
we
there's
ask, it's so important. What do you need to start functioning better? And then we continue to make sure we're looking at the underlying problem and individualizing it always.
I think there's a lot of people that are going to agree with the fact that there's days where we just fight just to exist. But just because we're so mentally and physically tired that
Yes.
we just literally just to exist. And we know all the things we need to do, but sometimes just existing is hard enough. Here's a question that I was thinking of while you were talking, because I know you specialize in hormones. Now, being 51 years old, it's been brought up in conversation a couple times.
Sure.
That I'm getting to that age to where, sometimes we start reflecting on life and maybe regret and all this. And I don't feel that, but I also understand and respect the fact that, we do go through this transformation at around 50 years old, give or take. How do we determine that compared to like something physically wrong with our
Yeah, and I think that's a really good question. A lot of it has to do with some symptoms, but sometimes age, like you said. For men, it tends to be 45 and above, or if they've had constant trauma or continuous chronic stress for years and years, it can happen much earlier. And for women, it starts the day they get their period. It can start at age 10. It could be during their menstrual cycle. It can be during college and extra stress in menstrual cycle. It can be pre-pregnancy, post-pregnancy. Then we have perimenopause, which can happen between age 30 and 55 now. Used to be something that happened 50, late 40s, 50s earliest, and it's happening in 30-year-olds now, of hormone changes because of our chronic stress and our environmental toxins and prescription medications. So when we look at the hormones, we always say that there's a same kind of thing, is that if you're a certain age, hormones are absolutely playing a part of what's affecting your muscle maintenance, your cognitive functioning, your performance, whether it's exercise, daily performance, or in the bedroom. And so all of those things are super important at certain ages or if there's certain symptoms. And that's where, again, if let's say you say, well, I have all these things, I don't even know where to start. like Kent you start with the 3 foundational things, and then one of your top symptoms that we make sure we do that test. So we start addressing that. And if you don't know, that's when we ask you questions and say, you know what, you've got all these things, but what I'm hearing is if you don't have the energy, nothing else matters. Well, then we've got to get your energy and your brain functioning better to then get rid of the toxins and again do those things. But the foundation has to be there. That's one thing that's missing a lot of times. People always have a major problem or a major event and they want to address that. But the problem is if your body's a system, your foot's connected to your ovaries connected to your brain's connected to your right arm. We treat everything like it's separate. And if you don't have systematic foundational things that support that amazing magical biochemistry and the hormone pathways, you're going to have a very hard time. You'll feel better, then you won't be better again. And that's why we try to do it in the right way. But we know a lot of times we've got to do an extra test that help people with the number one symptom that's really holding back their quality of life. So hormones are huge because, yeah.
Explain to people the importance of this, though, while you're going through the physical healing.
Yeah. I mean, and that's where I'll let Kent talk about, the moods and the apathy. I'll talk more about the energy level, because when you have constant chronic stress, and especially if you're older, and older for a man, 45 and older, for a female, 35 and older, then there is going to be some hormone issues. And the number one are actually the adrenal glands. It isn't necessarily the testosterone. The adrenal glands are what help with resilience of any kind of stress, medical, biochemical, emotional, trauma, doesn't matter, a good or bad day. And if you don't have that resilience, your adrenals can't give you that energy to keep moving forward during the day. And of course, then it affects the mental health output, but even the hormones, those adrenals directly affect the aging of the brain tissues and white matter in your brain. So then it goes over to the neurotransmitters, which Kent is much better explaining than I am. I know how to address it, but I think he explains it better, you know?
Yeah, they're all tied together. And the nice thing about some of the neurotransmitter tests that we do is it's all encompassing. So it's not only measuring these specific levels, but it also does a really good job of saying each of these is tied to each other in a certain way, and it lays out a chart that's easy for us to read. And if you're ordering the test, it also you can read it yourself. But like it's like a cascade of here's the ingredients that the body uses to create this certain chemical, and here's what the chemical does for you. So like the top three, for example, if you need more energy, or if you're just feeling flat or blah or unmotivated, and they're really popular ones that most people have heard of. You've got dopamine, which affects motivation and how rewarding it is to do something and follow through on something. You've got serotonin, everybody knows it for mood, but it also affects sleep and libido and your ability to focus. And then norepinephrine, for example, is really good. That's like your get up and go. If you have a podcast that you got to get on and you need to be focused and alert, or you're in a meeting and you need to be really present and focused on what's going on, that's what that one does, for example. So they're all tied to each other. They each have different functions, but the balance of them all is the most important thing. And I think that's something that's missed a lot of times. If you're addressing one thing with a specific medication or a supplement without measuring the others at the same time.
A question though, sometimes they'll give Adderall or something to help with focus. Is
Yeah.
that like if we address this naturally, like you were referring to, could that actually help people with ADHD and their focus?
Yeah, absolutely. I did a lecture last night with someone that is in that mental health field, and that's what most of the people that were on the lecture were for is, ADD, ADHD. And again, they want to address it a different way. They've done the medications, they haven't worked, or they're having side effects, and they want to know what else they can do. And we have things that help right away, also while we're waiting for your measurements. And so there are even things that we can help so people have a little hope, you know. There's something called Luminate that we use that helps trigger some of the resilience in your adrenal glands, those resilient glands that handle stress and fight and flight, like Ken said, and also that help with brain functioning and your energy. But that's why we're waiting for the test so that you have some hope. Like, oh my gosh, I'm feeling 10% better. I'm really hopeful. I can't wait to actually see what my results are. So
It's incredible how much you notice when you actually feel a little bit better.
yes, yes,
So
it's
so
really dramatic.
what happens then, Val or and Kent, when okay, so I get the testing sent to me, and then I go through the process, pack it up, send it off, and then what happens then?
So the next step is end to end. You sign up, we get it sent to you. By the time we can get the lab test back from the lab and evaluate it and then give you our recommendations, that's like probably around a 3 to 4 week process. But what you'll be notified of from us is you'll get your full lab result directly. We'll include that from the lab so you can see the raw results. You'll also get our interpretation and then what to do about it, which is the most important part. Because a lot of times people will get a lab test or they'll just try something and then that's it. And then they have to make all of the decisions themselves. What we really want to focus on is not only giving you specific recommendations for here's what we know and is proven to work through supplements or lifestyle changes, but also just empower people to take action instead of saying, here's the lab result. Okay, now what do I do about it?
So you guys aren't just a one-time come and get the test, here's the results, see you later. You guys establish relationships with the people.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's where, that difference comes in again. Because let's say you even feel 50% better in 3 to 4 months. But we know, again, if you just stop that protocol, it will probably come back because we haven't done it or fixed it and fine-tuned it enough for it to last. And then see how that recovery works. Some people can go off a lot of the things and they need, once things are repaired, some people have done permanent damage and they know that. And that's where the testing helps us with how you're doing. And that's what's so important. And that's so we see that all the time where someone tests once and they never test again. I have that all the time with we have it with multiple things. And we're like, well, you never followed through. You never retested. You didn't you have to fine tune things because we know clinically what's effective with working with over 20,000 patients over all these times, but your body's still unique compared to Kent or my own, right? Because your environment's different, your medical history is different, how you think is different, your daily life is different, your food is different. So that's where the fine tuning really starts to happen in the second testing. And that's when it gets really exciting. But you've already got hope and some changes. So then you feel like, okay, I can do this.
How long do you recommend for the second test?
It depends on the test results, but typically the earliest is 3 to 4 months, unless something's really extreme. And there are some things that are extreme that we can have changes in even in 60 days. Most are 3 to 4 months and up to 6 months. So it's not that you're testing every other week or anything like that.
You're
And
just looking at the results from a few 3 to 6 months worth of work, and then do you make it's maybe some adjustments get made
that's
or
correct. Yeah,
okay.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so it's very reasonable and it's a step process. And I think that's the part where people have to realize again, we're not putting a band-aid on it. It'd be like if I saw you and you've got band-aids on your arm and I'm like, oh my gosh, what happened? I heard you have new kitties. I saw that on your posts. And you're like, no, they didn't hurt me. I just put band-aids on because I didn't know what to do. And I'm like, what? And we do that every day. We put band-aids on symptoms and things that are going on instead of fixing the underlying problem. And that's
Here's
where we come from.
this is the beautiful thing about validating what you guys do is that you guys give the test, you establish the relationships, and then you give the second test where you actually sit down and say, look, you are doing better. We are getting real results and improving your health, and I have the real data to prove it.
Yep. Yep.
That is huge.
Yeah.
That is monstrous.
And,
Um,
and you know what happens, Rocky? Sometimes this happened recently with someone that I was working with, is that they got the results back. It's very unusual to have every result be better. And this person was feeling about 25% better. And she was very upset because she said, how come I'm not 100% better? I said, that's where we know not everything is based on these levels. You're working 12 to 14-hour days. You're eating one meal a day. It's not enough, and that meal isn't healthy. Now we know you're also that we fixed a lot of the biochemical, but now are you willing to look at some of the lifestyle things that are affecting how you're feeling? We know we've got the biochemical better, But now it's time to address some of these things, and you've got to really be willing to look at it and find the places that you can change other things that might not be just biochemical.
Can we address that for a second? Because I don't know if it's something that people should kind of just consciously be aware of, but there is a lifestyle change. It's just not changing and putting medicine or putting vitamins or something healthy in your body. It's literally changing a lifestyle too. Do you find this a lot with people that they learn sometimes that it's just not what I'm putting in my body that changes, but everything changes? Do you see that a lot?
Yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah. Kent, you want to address that first? And
yeah,
I'll give a hormone
I,
example.
I have a really good example from someone that I worked with recently. Um, let's say it was about a year ago, they tested for a chemical called glyphosate, which we know it has a lot of negative effects as far as being associated with cancer, DNA damage, hormone changes, etc. And it's the most common chemical in weed killers, which means that it's very prevalent on food, specific foods. Um, so they tested this, it was high. We gave them specific recommendations and detox therapies so that they could, number one, reduce their exposure, and number two, help their body flush that out of their system, right? Retest about 6 months later, it's very low compared to before, almost a third of what it was, which is incredible. And at this point, we're thinking, okay, if it stays low, then maybe next time we can wean off of the detoxes. And I think where a lot of people run into trouble with this is they say, okay, it's much better now. I can go back to what I was doing before. And then that person comes back 6 months later again, and their level is back to what it was before because their lifestyle hadn't adjusted at all.
Oh, it's kind of like an alcoholic saying, well, okay, I've been sober for 6 months. I can go back and do it again. And then he realizes 2 months later, he's back to the same chaos.
Yes. That's a really good example. A hormone example, if I could, is really common with women with libido, is that we'll get their testosterone, we'll get their hormones better, and they'll say, my libido's not any better. But then they'll go on vacation. And on vacation, I said, well, how was it on vacation? Oh, it was great. I was interested every other day. And I'm like, wait a minute, at home, you're saying it's every 6 months. And I said, so now we know it's not the hormones, that we have to start looking at the stress and the tasks at home. And yes, the hormones were a part of it because that's where it was different on vacation. But when it's not back to that same kind of situation at home, how much is it hormones? Now we know those are in good shape and we know you're capable of feeling certain things. But then when you go back home, it's not as bad as it was, but not like vacation. And that's where we have to realize how much stress and lifestyle and work and different things impact even our hormone levels or things that feel like it must be only biochemical. It must be because of menopause, and it's not.
I wonder how many people go through that to where they're going through a stress or they're going through a hormonal
Yeah.
situation and they're misdiagnosing it on their own and just kind of dealing with it when they could just make a simple phone call and literally start attacking that problem immediately.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And so, and like even with Kent, what he was talking about is, we had somebody, and even myself, I'll test, and we do all sorts of things as clinicians, but we test ourselves more often and even test things. And when we talk about glyphosate, I actually just bought non-organic berries and only ate one serving a week versus the organic, and my glyphosate went off the chart again. So again, you can't ever go back to it, now, and that's where once you really understand how certain things impact my body, then I know I just can't do it. I've got to have organic berries or none. That's it.
So the stuff that they spray on our foods in the stores are fruits and vegetables. And I know, you know what, as much as I want to pretend that we thoroughly wash everything when we get it,
Yeah.
we don't.
Yeah,
That literally impacts our body like that.
absolutely.
I mean, I don't mean to sound
No, but most people, how would they know, right?
that's scary. So if I had a high level of glyphosate in my system, there's a higher chance of me potentially getting things wrong with me.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, not just cognitive things, but actually lymphoma. Yeah. Yeah. So it's, and here there's people trying to do the right thing, right? With eating more fruits and vegetables, but they've got to know which ones have the higher glyphosate, which ones to buy, which ones they have to buy organic, which ones they should grow, that type of thing. And that's part of why we love educating. We do lots of education on our social media channels for free. We have lots of free blogs. And we volunteer our time all the time. Even last night, I volunteered for another health professional and said, I've got these mental health cases and these people are super proactive. I don't know what else to do. I
I
said,
do
get
want
them
to
on a
say
Zoom and I'll help.
that you guys also do a lot of online seminars, and those are amazing. And so when she mentioned social medias, you got to follow the social medias, and that's where you're going to get all your information. You know, Kent, he takes care of it. It's phenomenal. So you guys constantly, and that's why I referenced when we first started this program that you guys were just in Dallas. You guys were just up in DC because there's not a plateau. This constantly changes, and the understanding of things and medicine and natural and this and that and understanding how we are psychologically at the same time. I mean, it's a combination. It's like a trifecta almost, right? Mind, spirit, body. Does that
Absolutely.
make sense? Right?
Yeah. And we do. We have to go different places and we have to stay up on this within what our specialty is. And I think that's where also, Rocky, people go wrong is they ask the wrong person, the they ask the right question to the wrong person. So it's like a lot of times someone will go to their physician and ask, okay, I'm having this problem. I've already tried this medication, it doesn't work. What else could I do naturally that would lower systemic inflammation? They have no training. Zero, 10 years. It would be like you asking me to do surgery on you. I'm not a surgeon, even though I've seen lots of surgeries. You would not let me do surgery on you. But we'll go to the wrong person, that doesn't have the background to ask a good question. So that's where you want to go to people that do see thousands of patients and have experience in certain things, just like you, right? I've never run a podcast. I'm sure I could learn, but I'm not going to be able to just do one and be as good as you. So that's where, again, ask the right question to the right person that has lots of experience or in certain areas.
I was talking with Ken a few weeks back, and I asked him a question because I heard of a study talking about D3, vitamin D3, and that, a lot of, as we get older in men, that's one of our greatest deficiencies in our body. And that's what causes a lot of the Alzheimer's or dementia. Potentially, so if I'm misspeaking, I completely apologize. Um, I didn't realize the amount of people that were deprived in like a vitamin D3, something that you would think is like we'd have an overabundance in our system, and we don't. What does
Yeah.
the vitamin D3 if we lack it? What are the effects on the body when we lack it in our body?
I mean, the basic things are you've got bone health, you've got immune system function, you've got mood regulation, you've got hormone balance. It it acts as a hormone in our body, vitamin D does. So it affects almost every process that we have.
Yeah.
And then like the most recent statistics that I could find said something around in the upper 30s percentile of adults are deficient in the US. And that's like deficient meaning they're about halfway where we want them to be. So it's actually much higher percentage of people are deficient in vitamin D.
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
right,
And
so
when we look at preventative levels, ideal, where we're not talking just deficiency, because we don't want to have deficiency that will contribute to conditions and disease. We want optimal. That's a whole nother level. I would say I only have one patient a year that is optimal levels. One,
wow,
a thousand.
but how many of them think they are?
Yeah, most people just either don't know they are or they just think they are. They say all the time, right? I live in Florida. You've lived in Texas, now you live in Florida. You'll say, oh, I live in a sunny state. I'm out, I walk in the sun, I bike ride every day. It's not enough. The way our skin, because of so many different things, not just sunscreen, but our metabolism and different things that are affecting our bodies now, we don't make the vitamin D the same way. They showed even surfers and skateboarders in Hawaii, two-thirds had medical deficiencies. So you can't say I'm in the sun. You have to measure it because there's all those other influences that could impact those hormonal levels as well as your age and your diet. So many different things.
So we talked about the omega. We talked about the D3, but this is the one that I'm interested in all of them, but fruits and vegetables. And you guys have a program, the Juice Plus program. Can we talk about that?
Sure, sure.
Please. What is Juice Plus?
Okay, you want to explain it or?
It's powdered fruits, vegetables, and berries. So each serving is or it's exactly 30 different fruits, vegetables, and berries. And it has more than 40 medical studies which is why we feel so confident using it and recommending it. I've taken it myself for more than 10 years. Valerie has recommended it for at least 20 years by now.
23.
And 23, wow. And it's a foundation. It's part of the foundation because everybody knows fruits and vegetables are good for you. And the problem is either you're eating them every once in a while, so it's not consistent. You're not eating enough every day, minimum 5 servings of a variety. That can add up pretty quickly. It can be expensive and also just difficult to do, especially if you have a family. And then now, especially with glyphosate, you have to buy organic of certain ones, and that obviously costs more money. So we really like using the Juice Plus and recommending it to people because it helps you achieve a baseline for here's phytochemicals, nutrition from fruits and vegetables that I can get every day, no matter what.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, how many people that are listening right now are guilty of one thing? You're busy throughout the whole day, so you hurry up and go home and throw in a Totino's pizza really quick, and you hurry up and gag that thing down. You chase it with a Coke, and then you go to bed, get ready for the next day. There's not one bit of nutritional value that you put in your body the entire day, but yet you sat there and you busted your butt, and burning all this energy, and
Yeah.
I don't think we realize how much we're depriving our bodies of what it really needs every single day.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, nutrition is something that's very underlooked. I mean, why I became a registered dietitian first with my degrees and certifications was because the only thing we all have in common is we're going to eat. We have to eat our entire life. Even if you are very sick, you have to have a tube feeding. If you're in a coma, you still have to have a TPN. You still have to be fed artificially. You have to eat. And yet we spend the least amount of time educating. And it's the most important fuel we have. I mean, nobody goes and puts a banana in their gas tank because they don't feel like paying gas prices, right? But we will put M&Ms and crap, right, in our body. Or if you had a racehorse, Rocky, would you give it M&Ms? Absolutely not. What do you give a racehorse that's good or reward?
The best nutritional value food possible.
Carrots,
Yep.
apples, right? I mean, come on. And yet we would never do that for a racehorse. And yet we treat ourselves like crap. But a lot of it, Rocky, is people don't know. They haven't been educated about the value. They'll just say fruits and vegetables are good for you or lean protein's good for you. They don't tell you why. And I think most people do want to understand why, or when they do experience it, they're like, "Oh my God, I didn't know my afternoon slump and my digestive reflux and my problems with going to the bathroom and my stomach pain was all due to my nutrition. Look, I'm a normal weight." It's like that doesn't matter.
Well, Val, the Captain Crunch with berries that's made out of fertilizer is phenomenally good tasting.
There you go, right? And it's addictive. You know, the, the
Yes.
the more you eat junk food, the more you want. And the companies spend millions of dollars so that you are addicted. I remember we used to have cereal boxes. We'd mark our cereal boxes because I had two sisters because we want to make sure no one ate any of our cereal. That's ridiculous. That's like crazy thinking, right? Because it was
So
addictive.
let me ask you this one. So how does that level with both of you when you look at society and we look at like Popeyes and we look at Whataburger and all these other companies? Um, there's been real studies done. There was that one study done with, I think it was Popeyes or one of those chicken places where they actually tested the meat and there was addictive products in there because they're wondering why people went so crazy when they had to shut down for a day. When you do what you do and understand the body the way and the levels that you do and understanding the deficiencies and what we need, does it frustrate either one of you guys when we have an FDA that's to look out for the best interest and the safety of the population, but allow us to consume toxic poisons? I mean, does that frustrate you at all, or do we just dance around it? With
Well, it used to for me. I'll speak for myself because I've been in the business for 30 years. It used to. I used to get really upset. But, that's where I've changed my tune because if you're going to get upset, you're going to get upset about everything because life is not fair. The government does not protect you. They try. There's certain things they do, but we have got to be responsible for ourselves. And we try to start small. We know that most people, even people that are normal weight, that think they're doing really well, are not eating optimally. And so we try to start small with making you feel better and then saying, okay, what about if we just replace one or two foods? What if we just only started with breakfast? Once you get that down and you start feeling better and you can do it, then we'll go on. And that doesn't mean we eliminate fun foods, but we eat fun foods morning, noon, and night. That's the problem. and processed food. It's a lot of the processed foods that are so addictive and cause a lot of the mental and cognitive and emotional issues, to be honest, Rocky.
I mean, just look at the how addictive sugar is. Just
Yeah.
sugar.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I've woken up at 3 in the morning, ate a whole box of lemon heads. I'm
Yeah.
not even lying. I really did. It
Yeah.
was phenomenal. It
I
really
know.
was.
I know. And whether you're
So,
doing lemon heads or honey, people do it because it's an instant hit.
yeah. Isn't that weird? And we think we're doing it just because we're kind of craving it, you know, but our
Yeah.
body is screaming for it, you know.
Yes. Yeah.
So what's the future look like? What do you guys have planned? What do you guys see? I know you guys now when you were in Texas because that was that an Alzheimer's? That was something for the mind. What were you doing in Texas?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that was a brain health
Brain
conference.
health, brain health.
So that was anything brain health. It was a lot about Alzheimer's and other neurodegenerative disorders, dementia-related risk factors, immediate things that people can test for and do about it. We had some specific stuff about really proactive treatments if people reach that stage. But I mean, the takeaway there was that it's not something that you can fully reverse. So the best thing we can do is prevent it. And that's something that Valerie and I were, I mean, she's been in the business longer than I have, but I was shocked at the amount of simple things that people can test for and adjust to lower the risk for something that once you have it, then you can't get rid of it. Like it's shocking to me, Rocky.
It's a lot of
Like
stuff
how
is
simple
irreversible.
it could be.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. If you address it early enough, and to me that was the biggest takeaway for me
Yeah.
because that's really what we're trying to do. That's our overall goal here with this business is working on preventative care instead of uh, reacting afterward.
That's kind of scary. So I wanted to say it again. A lot of the stuff is irreversible.
Yes.
You know, I had a TBI. It took me a year to get my memory back. And I'll be honest, there's sometimes I get a little freaked out, you know, because I deal with I mean, obviously you guys know me and I deal with some memory things. And so when you said that, Kent, I was just like, God, maybe I need to save what I got left because Val, you said that there's a lot of people that are in shape, right? I'm in
Right.
shape. I can go cut my grass and I can have a six pack at 51
Yeah.
years old.
Yeah.
What you see on the outside is not what you're getting on the inside, right? So
That's
you're
right.
exactly right. Don't assume just because you're within your weight range means that, you know, but then Ken, you kind of doubled that and it talked about the reversible things, and I really want people to let that register, especially when it comes to your mind, because we see these videos of people with Alzheimer's. We see these children trying to get their parents to remember a moment.
I know.
Um, so what he's saying is that there's ways that we can prolong our memory. And so why aren't we doing it is the question. So we need to take a little bit more responsibility in our own personal health. And I'm talking to me. That's who I'm talking to. And the reason why I'm talking with them today is because I'm talking to me. And hopefully everybody is listening to this because it's not that difficult to actually start living the right life.
Yeah. And I think, and it's really nice, Rocky, because you're taking that and saying it's about you, but it's about all of us, because we're all each other's neighbors and friend and colleagues and children, and you know, and we're all going to touch each other's lives. And I always say there's a butterfly effect. When you don't feel well, you affect our life. And if Kent feels your pain, then I feel your pain. If I'm having a day where I feel like, oh my gosh, this is so hard, then it affects my husband. You know, it affects, it's a butterfly effect with illness. And we just don't. And that's part of why we educate, because people really have to understand how important that vitamin D and essential fatty acids are for even like just part of the prevention for dementia and Alzheimer's. Because you cannot, there's not any cases of it reversing once you have it. And so you've got to prevent it. And endotoxins were number one, and brain trauma was number two. I was very surprised by that. I really thought it was going to be more like genetics and a whole bunch of other things. Those were the top two currently. And again, those are obviously if you have certain brain trauma, if you were a football player, you've had brain trauma, I guarantee you, from being hit. But that means it's even more important for you. And so, and it's never too late, because they showed even when people had beginning stages of severe cognitive issues where they maybe couldn't be diagnosed yet or not, that even if they were given small amounts, not even therapeutic amounts of D and essential fatty acids, there were improvements when they looked at brain matter, when they looked at different types of behavior. So, and it's subtle because Americans want everything. It's here, you have it or you don't. The body doesn't work that way. Most conditions are 10 to 20 years in the making. And so it wasn't that all of a sudden you had a heart attack. It was 10 years or 30 years of constant plaque buildup. It was not from the day before, you know. And yet people say that all the time. I got breast cancer this year. Last year my mammogram was normal. No, the mammogram's detection. It's not prevention. It's very important. I'm not saying it's not important, but it's detection. It's not prevention. You already
Why
have.
why don't we care until we have to? Why are we like that?
I don't know, Ken. I think
You know, I
it's not, here's the thing. I really think it starts with education
yeah.
because nobody gets excited about brushing their teeth, right, Rocky? If I said, Rocky, what kind of toothpaste do you use? How long do you brush? You'd be like, oh, this lady's a little weird, right? But your mom or dad or whoever loved you told you probably 5,000 times before you actually started brushing your teeth regularly. And you don't go excited every night. Oh, I get to brush my teeth. I'm so excited. I'm going to talk to everybody and tell them I'm getting ready to brush my teeth, but you do it, right? Because you were taught you could have bad breath. People might not like you. You might have your teeth fall out. If you have dental work, it hurts. All these things. You're like, oh my gosh, but when you're told enough, you do it. You don't get excited about it. You don't get a big reward. Things still happen to your teeth, but it's darn important, right? So if we did the same thing with vitamin D, the same thing with testing omegas, the same thing with having a healthier breakfast, or when you do make a pizza, it's not every night. And what could you have on the pizza that would still make it better? Our lives would be completely different, but we don't spend any time on that. We spend all the time on vacations and making money or on driver's license. Think about what you go through to have a driver's license, a permit, tests, training. We teach them nothing about our bodies. Nothing.
I learned that a little off topic, but there's a school in Japan that actually teaches their elementary kids to garden,
Yeah.
to harvest their garden,
Yeah.
and how to harvest the food that they garden and cook with it. So they're teaching all the nutritional values of the growing of it and the
Yeah.
cooking of it at the same time.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, why is not our educational system doing that?
Yeah.
It's just kind of support what you were saying is that it's the education part. Instead, we're going to go get that vending machine in all our elementary schools with the Doritos and Fritos and the Coca-Colas now. And we wonder why we have the problems in our country that we do with health.
Yeah. And I think also people that are learning about health are very confused because every podcast they listen to says something different. Eat meat, don't eat meat. Eat salmon, don't eat salmon. Do this, don't do that. I'm like, it takes a lot more discussion. And then there's the individualization. My husband has exactly opposite body type than me. He's been around the same weight and leanness his whole life. I can gain 10 pounds in 1 week, hardly doing anything different. And I have to exercise 2 hours a day to maintain a healthy weight, not to be lean. To be lean, I have to do extreme things. So there's differences in how we need to eat. Now we can still eat clean, right, and healthier, but there's still a difference in what he can eat and also how much he can eat compared to myself. So that's where that individuality comes in because you might need 1,000 IUs of D. Kent might need 5,000. I might need 75,000. Well, you can't take 75,000 without testing. You have to test to use therapeutic amounts. And again, that individuality is something that you can't guess. You have to test.
I was just going to say, you don't want to just go to a store and just buy a
No,
whole
you do
carton
not.
full of vitamins and just think you could just start eating them and things are going to go fine.
No, and I think that's a really good point. And Ken, maybe you want to talk about, because I know you're working on a whole new presentation on quality. That's a whole nother discussion. So talk about that a little bit, because it's super important why we have supplements on our website and why we test and have tested with human beings what we use.
Yeah, I mean, it starts from a pretty basic place. People look up supplements or take supplements because they want specific health outcomes. They want to improve something, right? And unless it is third-party tested and proven through clinical experience to work, you're not getting any of that guaranteed. Especially protein powders. A lot of them contain toxic metals. Other supplements are highly contaminated unless they're verified through a third-party testing or a third-party tested facility. So that's something that we pride ourselves on, is that anything that we offer, number one, it's clean and it's proven to be clean. It's not just we're hoping it's clean and that's it, right? Because the whole point of taking something is to help with address a certain issue, And if you're taking something that is contaminated, you're just shooting yourself in the foot. So that's part one. And then part two is that you know that it works. And I'm fortunate enough that Valerie has so much background and experience and has cultivated this list of here's what I know works through 20,000 or more patients. So it's actually that clinical experience, not just the research says that this supplement or product should do this, but that we actually can see changes in people.
That's that
So that,
irreplaceable tribal knowledge, brother, that you cannot learn in a textbook.
Yeah. Yeah. And even with my food science degree, when I ran a compounding pharmacy, the hard part was that we could have 5 potassiums that are all 100 milligrams, and Kent would only go up with this one. You'd only go up with this one. These three wouldn't work. They're all 100 milligrams. So even then, how it's manufactured is a difference. And that's part of the food science that started helping me even disseminate, asking more questions when I'd bring something in. So it's a really important thing, because when you're spending your money, whether you're spending $10 or 100, you're trying, like Ken said, no one is taking supplements or herbs to get sicker. They're trying to take it to increase and up their game in their health, or actually fix or possibly, change around a whole situation or a symptom or a medical concern.
So, Ken, tell us all about the shop and the availabilities, what you guys have to offer. So everybody knows that you're just not going to tell them what they need, that you guys will also get them what they need as well because you guys supply it. So tell everybody about the shop.
yeah, every supplement or every, okay, well, let me start from the beginning. You get your test, we evaluate it, and then based on that, we can recommend specific supplements and amounts. Now, all of that is available through our website, and like I mentioned before, all of that has been cultivated through Valerie's 20 plus years of experience of knowing what's safe and what works. So anything that we recommend for someone to start on or increase or decrease based on their level is from our shop because we know it's safe and we know that it actually works. So very rarely do we recommend that you find a similar product elsewhere online. Just yesterday, I was working with someone and they they said they were getting similar products online, similar similar to some of the things that we recommend for people, some of the things that we know through clinical experience works. And I look at their results, and the results don't indicate that what they're doing is working. And like the whole point of testing these things and retesting after following our protocol is to improve these levels. And if you're just taking something random that's similar enough, we don't know if it's third party tested. We don't know if anyone has actually tried it and retested and see if it actually works in people. So we only recommend things that we know are safe and effective.
Well, that there are some things that I just heard, probably news or whatever, that some of the vitamins that we buy over the counter, what they're made out of, how hard it is to digest on your stomach, that your body actually spends more energy just trying to digest the thing that it actually gives nutritional value to your body.
That's absolutely true. Bioavailability is a huge issue, which means when you're a human and you swallow it, does it do something to the body, or does it just go through in a pill? And that's where, again, that bioavailability is important. And I think, like with Ken said, when you go to our website, nutritionconnectionbalance.com, there is a testing section. You can order the kits right there. There's a supplement section. You can order the supplements right there. So we, again, try to make it easier for people to get the right information, to get the guidance they need. And again, be able to really not have to guess. I don't like guessing. We're clinicians, and again, people guess every day. They'll go to Amazon, they'll order something from TV. It just boggles my mind. And yet again, if you can get the right thing and or test, your chance of being healthier is going to be so much greater, Rocky.
I wonder how much people have spent in a lifetime guessing. You know what I'm talking about? They go try this, or they can't
Yep.
sleep, so they'll
Yep.
go try that, and
Yep.
then they'll just throw it over here on the counter, and it just
Yep.
doesn't work.
Yep.
So let me recap this real quick.
Yeah.
So people are feeling fatigue. You're kind of in like we'll call it the Rocky syndrome. You just kind of beat up a life, right? 50 years old. It doesn't matter what age you are, but you just kind of feel beat up and tired, and you're looking for a way to fix it. So what you do is go to nutritionconnectionbalance.com.
Yep.
You go order a test kit.
Yep.
What I would suggest first is call Valor Kent because they'll recommend what kind of testing you should get, and then you'll get the test sent to your house. You do the testing, send it back, and then they will get a hold of you and give you the full breakdown of what your body needs in the testing. Not just that, they will also get you the supplements that you need. Not just that, they'll also validate within 3, 4, 5 months after that there are improvements in your body. They timestamp it, they data follow it, they data track it. They follow the actual positive results that you are having on your body. So they're not just saying, here you are, here's your product, have a good day. They are becoming loyalists to you and your health. And I think that is a beautiful thing.
Yeah, thank you, Rocky. Yeah, we sure hope, that we just want people to have the right information because again, I think people's intentions are good, but they're lost and they're also confused and they don't know where to go to get the right information and the right testing. So thank you so
I,
much.
I'm all of them, and I'm the one that has taken everything for granted. And I say this, Kent and I have actually, we've talked about this. Um, I want people to understand that, I'm not trying to, this isn't a job what I'm doing here, right? These are people that I believe in. These are people that are doing the right thing. I've been in this industry for a long time and I've seen a lot of things sold. Everybody has the miracle, the miracle product, but I've never seen such commitment, right? I've never seen commitment, not just to a job or a profession, but to people and their health and their mental sanity. And, coming from a crazy industry that I do, it's refreshing to find people like this. And believe me, the importance of surrounding your people like this as well. So what you need to do is go to nutritionconnectionbalance.com. Look them up on Facebook. Look them up on Instagram. Look them up on YouTube, on TikTok. There's a ton going on, and there's going to be a ton more going on. Keep an eye out for Kent. He is putting together a whole bunch of videos, informational shorts, quick ones, long ones, interviews, a whole bunch of things coming up. But I want to leave the floor open for Val and Ken if you have any final words before we take everybody out.
Well, I think just, thank you so much, Rocky, for your passion and again, and your honesty and letting people know that you're vulnerable too and nobody's perfect. And I think the second thing is decide to take a step. Don't try to be overwhelmed with everything that's going on. Take one step. If it has to be just the foundation, start there. If it's a testing, start there. But do something. Always when I do a speech, I say, I don't want to hear afterwards, that was a great speech. She was a great speaker. I want to hear what I'm going to change. What did you learn that you could put into application that makes your life, your body, and your quality of life better? And that's what we're all about. So thank you so much.
Sir Ken.
I think you said that perfectly. There's nothing for me to add. The best step is the next one.
So it's nutritionconnectionbalance.com. Look them up on all their socials. Trust me, I'll make sure that you see them. You know what I'm saying? But I appreciate both you. I appreciate everything that you're doing. I appreciate your friendship and of course your patience with me because I'm a unique person. I understand that. But it's the motivation of wanting to be better for myself. And it's been a long time since I felt that. So I am grateful for you as well. So ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of me, myself, Rocky Stucci and Stucci Media, Kent and Valerie, from our family to yours, much love and much respect. And until next time, nutritionconnectionbalance.com. Good night, everybody.